at 9:30. So, Prof. Chandra and Prof. Hafidzi, how are you?
Alhamdulillah.
Okay.
Alhamdulillah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation at very short notice. But it is indeed, this is a very topical, topic that we need to discuss tonight. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, preceded by weeks of aggression and hostile arrest of Palestinians by the Israeli occupation police in Sheikh Jarrah and Aqsa Mosque, violence has now spiraled into deadly bombings and heavy artillery raids by Israel, claiming the lives of almost 200 Palestinians, about half of whom are children and women, and injured or maimed hundreds more. The continuous and increasing Israeli violence during the final days of the Muslim holy month of Ramadan, up until Eid al-Fitr, further escalated when Hamas and other resistance groups finally retaliated by launching homemade rockets targeting several main cities in Israel, including Tel Aviv, claiming several Israeli casualties. The Israeli onslaught has destroyed several landmark buildings in Gaza, flattening at least two high-rise complexes that house residential apartments and offices of new organizations, including Al Jazeera and Associated Press. Also, in the short span of 1 month, more than 1,500 Palestinian men and women were arrested, the highest since 2015. Various political developments also mandate a closer inspection. The political threat facing Netanyahu and the imminent loss of his Likud party in the Israeli general elections has been described as the primary factor for escalating violence and showing support through fear. On the Palestinian side, discontent has been brewing over the sudden postponement of its planned elections. These internal politics, coupled with clear signs of a power shift between the US, China, Russia, Iran, and Saudi Arabia, among others, have also directly shaped how international actors responded to the crisis. Ladies and gentlemen, as the crisis unfolds and amid fresh declaration by Israel to launch new attacks, this Iais Malaysia Forum will be discussing the decades of unresolved Palestinian quest for dignity, security, and justice under the illegal occupation. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have been 2 rounds with these panelists tonight. We will begin with Prof. Chandra. Prof. Chandra, in your opinion, who are the primary stakeholders and what are the key driving factors behind the current onslaught by Israel? Over to you, Prof. Chandra.
Yeah. Thank you, Brother Azam. May I also extend my greetings to my fellow panelists, Dr. Hafidzi, and also Ambassador Ali, and the viewers. I'm sure many of our friends amongst our viewers. To all of them, warmest greetings. Warmest greetings that require a special meaning because we are in Shawwal, and just a few days ago we had celebrated Eid Mubarak. Dear friends, the title of this forum talks of Israeli assaults upon Palestine. That, to my mind, is most appropriate. It is a good starting point. Israeli assaults. In other words, we are not saying that what we are going to discuss is the Palestinian attempt to subvert the integrity of the Israeli state. We're not discussing rockets from Palestine directed against Israel. We are calling a spade, which is that it is Israeli assaults, which are at the root of what is happening now. Those assaults, in turn, are a reflection of some deeper melodies that explain the crisis in Palestine for so many decades now. So that's going to be one's focus. If you look at what has been happening, how can the rockets be responsible for the crisis? They were, at best, a retaliation to what had been happening over a period of time. What was happening in Sheikh Jarrah, what was happening at Al-Aqsa, what was happening at the Damascus Gate. The Palestinians, as usual, and other Muslims, they were very tolerant for quite a long while. But after a certain point, they felt that they could not just do nothing. And this is when man-made rockets and perhaps more sophisticated rockets were hauled, were directed at Israel. Why do I say that this focus should be kept in mind all the while? Because the mainstream media has given the impression on this occasion, as in the past, that the fault lies with the Palestinians. It's because of their rockets, it's because of their sniper attacks, it's because of their so-called killings that crises of this sort erupt from time to time. We know from what we just said that this is not the reason. We know why Sheikh Jarrah generates so much pain among the Palestinians, because it is a reminder of what has happened to Palestine and its people all this while. It is eviction, people being evicted from their homes that they had occupied for generations, not 10 years, 20 years, but for generations. It is a reminder of how they've been treated all along, disrupting prayers, trying to make it difficult to enjoy a little bit of life's blessings during Ramadan, which is what they've done all along. It is what you will see happening in so many different parts of the Muslim world. Now that becomes a big issue, and they try to curb it, they try to prevent Palestinians and other Muslims from doing these things. Hence the anger, hence the retaliation. Just look back at what had happened in the past. 2014, the last major war, the assault, again, that would be the most appropriate word, the assault on Gaza. And we know a large number of lives were lost. Here again, it was Israel that provoked a certain reaction. And once the reaction expressed itself, they put the blame upon the Palestinians. 2012, again Gaza, again the same pattern. 2008, 2009. Gaza, again the same pattern. This has been happening over and over again. In other words, we would not be wrong in saying this forcefully, that there is a pattern behind this. It is part of a much larger, a more insidious, a more diabolical plan. And that is what we should all be focusing upon, the whole world, that this is part of a diabolical plan. And what is that diabolical plan? It is the ethnic cleansing of Palestine. Getting rid of the people of the land, those who have been there for a very long while, pretending that it's something else, putting the blame upon the victim. This is the pattern. This is the game that has been going on for a long while. The ethnic cleansing of Palestine is an incomplete project. They had started this some time ago. One can even argue before the establishment of the State of Israel, by buying up Palestinian farms, lands, trying to push them out in all sorts of very subtle and malicious ways. Now we are seeing yet another expression of that same pattern through what has happened in 2021. Why do they want to do this? Why do they want to cleanse Palestine? We have to try to understand this. Because as far as they're concerned, this is their land, their exclusive land. They're the only ones who have an exclusive, divinely ordained right to the land called Palestine. This is what they believe in. So those people have been living there. It doesn't matter if they've been living there for 10 years, for 100 years, or 500 years, they have to be wiped out. They have to be exterminated. They have to be eliminated. That is the real story behind the tragedy of Palestine. A concerted, determined, systematic attempt to eliminate the original people of the land. Why? Because don't forget what Palestinian leaders, even before the establishment of the state of Palestine in 1948, had said. The Israelis, they said, Israeli leaders rather had said, Israelis right at the helm of the Zionist movement. These Israelis are returning to a land without a people. This is one of the well-known phrases. A land without a people. A people without a land, meaning by which the Israelis are now returning to a land without a people. It's totally absurd. They must have forgotten the well-established, well-documented, well-narrated history of Palestine. If you look at its most recent history from 638 AD, the time Umar ibn Khattab restored Palestine. From 638, continuously, except for a short period of time, those who ruled Palestine were Muslims, right up to 1948. This is a historical fact that cannot be disputed by anyone. And that short period was when the Christians captured Jerusalem and ruled over Jerusalem and some of the other neighborhoods from 1099 to 1187. It's a short period in that long history. The rest of the time, it was the Muslims who were the rulers of Palestine. But it was not an exclusive state. Never. The Muslims regarded others, the Christians, the Jews, as part and parcel of Jerusalem, part and parcel of Palestine. Don't forget in 638, when Umar ibn Khattab captured Jerusalem, he was the one who brought back the Jews to Jerusalem. Who was the one who did this noble deed? It was Umar. And later on, if you remember, and I'm sure we're all aware of history, after Salahuddin al-Ayyubi retook Jerusalem, he was fair to everyone, the Jews, the Christians. There was no massacre. There was no attempt to eradicate anyone. This is one of the saddest dimensions of history, that the very people who had given protection to the Jews in particular brought them back, restored their role and their dignity, that these very people are now the victims of Israeli aggression, of Israeli hostilities. How can it be? Such ingratitude. But this is what had happened historically. So now you have the Jews of Europe, many from Eastern Europe, who claim to have this long historical link with Palestine. It's true that the Jews as a people have been linked to Palestine. No one is denying that. But be honest about history. The Jews are not the only people. Palestine has always been multi-ethnic and multi-religious. All sorts of different groups had lived there and had been rulers of Palestine, of Jerusalem, not just the Jews. And let us also not forget that in terms of ruling Jerusalem, administering Palestine, actual historical records tell us that Jewish rule was for a very, very short while. From what we know, maybe just David and Solomon, perhaps one or two others. That is the record. We don't just want to dispute these issues. We just want to say, set the record straight, look at what had really happened, acknowledge the passage of history, and convince everyone, including your people, most of all your own people, this is what had happened. Don't tell them lies. Don't fabricate about what had happened in the past. One of the major problems in dealing with the issue of Israel in relation to Palestine is that it is a story built upon lies, a lot of fabrications, which they are not prepared to subject to a thorough scrutiny and inquiry. Find out what really happened. Tell the truth. Look at what they're telling their school kids, their videos floating around about this. So much hatred. A hatred that is grown out of distortions, lies, fabrications. So all that we're asking for, just tell the truth. And I would say this even to Muslims. We have to be honest about Palestine. It was never exclusive to Muslims. Historically, it was never exclusive. Even when the Muslims were rulers, they lived with the others and they shared governance with the others, including Jews. So we don't subscribe to the idea that this is exclusive to Muslims, we must get rid of everyone else, drive them to the sea and so on. This has never been the thinking of Muslims who know the real situation. And again, if you look at the real record, it is when Muslims were in power for centuries that the multi-ethnic, multi-religious dimension of Palestine really emerged. So in other words, what we are saying is, let's return to that. A multi-religious, multi-ethnic Palestine. And given the era that we're in, democratic too. Meaning by which you go on the basis of the people who are there and the majority in any democracy, they have a role to play. And the majority would be Muslims, given what has happened over the last few centuries. You have to accept this reality. Now, this is a reality that reflects the world, which Jewish bigots, which narrow-minded Christian Zionists, they don't want to see this. In order to suppress this, they go on killing the indigenous people of Palestine. So that, friends, is the scenario that we must keep in mind when we talk about this very, very important issue to humankind. It is at the center of so many of the things that has happened to us, to the world. The whole question of Palestine and the injustice that has been done to this people. Which is why, as you know, and I quote this so often, Nelson Mandela, who was a great champion of the Palestinian cause, once said that Palestine is the most important moral issue of our time. The people come from outside whose relations with the land that they had claimed had been given to them by God. It's in the Bible. That's the answer they'll give you. Why do you make this claim about Palestine being your land? It is in the Bible. Now, there's something very interesting about this, which we have not often discussed. If you look at the Zionists who make this claim, and they were the ones who broadcast this claim loudly in the 19th century, land given to us by God, it is divine, it is in the Bible. The majority of Zionists were atheists. They didn't believe in God, but they believed that that land was given to them by God, by an entity that they did not believe in themselves, but it was given to them by God. It's totally absurd. You see how utterly ridiculous this is. This is why many religious and spiritual Jews never bought this. They were against this. For them, it was against the teachings of Judaism itself. Because, Judaism is not the same as Zionism. Zionism is a political ideology that emerged in 19th century Europe, which is closer ideologically to colonialism than to any of the religions. If you look at what Zionism really is, it's a colonial project of usurpation, annexation, settlement, expulsion. It's colonial. Now, this is the project that now dominates this issue, the whole issue of Palestine. Friends, I don't know how much time I have, Brother Azam. Have I run out of time?
Maybe we can have a second round.
Okay, right.
That.
Then let me
But
say,
if you have, a few words for this first round.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll deal with what can be done in the second round. Yeah?
Okay.
But let me conclude this first round just one sentence. On this issue, more than maybe most other issues, it is so important to lay the facts on the table, to tell the truth. We must insist upon this. Let's tell the truth. And once we've told the truth, the second part of what we're going to discuss will fall in place, which is something that the Bible talks about. The truth will set you free. Tell the truth, and that will set you free. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed, Prof. Chandra. I think you have started with a very good points. There are quite a number of very important points, which I think perhaps I can just pick up 2 or 3 points. I think you have started with, what is now happening in Palestine, particularly in Gaza. It is not something new. It happens many times. I think in the couple of years, you shared with viewers, 2014, 2012, 2009, 2008. So all of these incidents of what we call it ethnic cleansing is a plan to get rid of this Palestinian from that the world. And also I think you have shared with us about the historical background of what they call it, the belief of this, the gifted land, what we call it, that land belonged to them. And you mentioned that it was something, it is lies. And also from the historical background, Palestine has been a place where Muslims, Christians, and Jews have been settled down. I think that would be something, I think, points that you have shared. Perhaps I think there will be questions from the viewers later, perhaps to your points that you mentioned, whether the two states solutions still, I mean, can be one of the solutions taking into the current scenario. Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Chandra. So now we move to, I think I'm afraid that we haven't got His Excellency yet, but we will go to Prof. Hafidzi. Okay, Prof. Hafidzi, in your opinion, what are the most pressing issues surrounding the current crisis? Over to you, Prof. Hafidzi.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Salatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi washabbihi ajmain. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you so much to Brother Dr. Azam and Professor Dr. Chandra for enlightening us. In this first round, you have given a very fair and balanced view of what has happened in the past. Nothing short than the truth. And definitely this is what we need. Face the truth. Accept the truth. However bitter it is by everyone, on our side as well as the side of the Israelis. And what has been said by Dr. Chandra, the position of Baitul Maqdis, in the historical context as well as for all time to come, there is a city for all. If we talk about in terms of the Abrahamic religion, Ibrahim Khalilullah alayhi salam, when Umar al-Khattab liberated Al-Aqsa for the first time from the Byzantinian, from the Rome, this is what he declared, Al-Uqda al-Umuriyah, a declaration of peace, a guarantee of peace for everyone. The Christians and all the denominations, the Jews and the Muslims. And like Dr. Chandra said, Umar al-Khattab in the year 638 actually invited the Jews back because they have been persecuted by the Christians before that. Yeah? So that's why if we look at the old city, the environs of the Masjid al-Aqsa, you have the Armenian quarter, you have the Muslim quarter, and the Jewish quarter, and they've been living in harmony for hundreds of years until what happened about 100 years ago, or even earlier than that, when people from Europe came into Palestine. At first they trickled in, and then they came in droves. And this is what is in the mind of the Zionists, the pioneers. When they arrive in Palestine, and they look at the rocks, and they say that the people there is just like the rocks, meaning to say that they can be removed, and there is no regard for them in their own land. That's why this notion of we came to a land where there is no people. There is a complete disregard of the people that has been living there for generations. Even before the time of Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he arrived from Iraq, it was ordained by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to move to Shams. So there were already people there, and these are the Canaans, the Arabs of the Palestinian of today. They were the Canaans. They were the original people there. Yeah. Okay. Now, Alhamdulillah, we have a very good start in this deliberation of the issue, and let me touch on like Brother Dr. Azam said, what are the salient points that we should focus on what is happening, what is unfolding today. let's look at how this actually exploded into the yet brutal attack on the Palestinian. And these are the narratives that have been going around. Israel has the right to self-defense, and the Palestinians have been lobbing rockets into Israel. They are the ones to be blamed, and this is the blame game of similar note that has happened in the previous attack of 2014, 2012, 2009, 2010, and when Gaza was put on siege, was blockaded from the sea, land, and air. They use the same premise that we have to protect ourselves from these people that has been threatening us. They are trying to change the narrative, the true narrative, like Dr. Chandra has enlightened us before this, that they are the ones who were the troublemakers. The Zionists are the ones who came and removed people. We have just remembered 15th of May, about a week ago, about 5 days ago, this notorious event called Nakba, a catastrophe. 800,000 people were removed from their home, evicted from their homes at gunpoint, and the Jews who came from Europe, on the pretext that they have been persecuted by Adolf Hitler, Nazi Germany. They have gone through this tragedy of the so-called Holocaust, pogroms, in Hitler's definition or his dictionary. Yes, we did not deny Holocaust did happen. Yeah? A denial of Holocaust is plain lie. It did happen. Well, there is a dispute of how many Jews actually perished in the concentration camp, but there was a mass genocide. We never deny this. But how come you did the same oppression and the same crime to a people who has nothing to do with what is happening during the Second World War in Europe? And you took over their homes, not only their homes, their belongings, their furniture, their utensils, even the pet. If the previous owner has a pet, that pet will be adopted by the Jews who came into it and took over the house. The farmland, the farm machinery. Now we are talking about the banks, yeah, saham, stocks, yeah, and the institution. And some of these Palestinians were rich. They were entrepreneurs, yeah, but they have to leave their home with whatever is on their body, yeah, and they left to the neighboring countries, which has been hosting them. Lebanon, Jordan, Syria, even Gaza was actually a refugee camp in parts of Sinai. And they thought they were staying there temporarily. And United Nations has actually passed a resolution in 1949, Resolution 194 in 3 in parentheses, that has ordained Israel to allow the refugees to return to their home, but this has not been complied, which has been expected. Israel has been actually not complying or ignoring so many resolutions. Resolution 242, Resolution 338, Resolution, so many resolutions, countless. This does not include resolutions that has been vetoed by the US. This one has been actually presented and voted for and accepted in the United Nations. So what happened? I can go on and on to highlight what has happened in the past, but suffice to say that what is happening today is a continuation of what has happened in the past for the past 73 years, or even longer than that. If we take the establishment of the mandated Palestine of 1920 under the British rule. Okay, what happened today? What actually triggered this so-called another attack from Israel? We must remember that Israel has been aiming to take over the old city, including the mosque, which is the epicenter, Al-Aqsa. And there are 14 gates or entrance to the mosque, to the Al-Aqsa mosque. And there's one enclave, and next to it is Bab Amud, the Damascus Gate. Yeah, this enclave is called Sheikh Jarrah, and we are not talking about. This has been going around the social media. 28 families. We are not talking about that 28 families that is facing eviction and house demolition, because if Israel is successful in this, then the whole environs of the Masjid Al-Aqsa, the surrounding area, will be in full control by the Israeli army and also the Israeli regime. And we are not talking of that 28 houses only, but we are talking about 22,000 houses around the mosque in the old city in East Jerusalem that has been served notice of eviction. 22,000. This is in the pipeline. Netanyahu is hoping to remove a bulk of the Palestinian population around the mosque, so that the idea of a complete control of Palestine will be manifested. They have been saying that there is no Judea and Samaria, which is the name given to the Israeli for the West Bank. There is no Judea and Samaria if there is no East Jerusalem. And there is no East Jerusalem, or there is no Jerusalem if there is no temple. So this is the ultimate aim, to take over the whole area. So what happened on the 26th of Ramadan? They are using an excuse, and that excuse is called the Jerusalem Day, a day that has been commemorated since 1968, when they took over the mosque, that took over East Jerusalem. A year after that, in 1968, 12th of May, they announced the Jerusalem Day, and they give a religious significance to that day, which is nothing religious at all. It is created, fabricated, just to give an excuse for the Jews to overtake and rule the whole area. So what happened during the last Ramadan? That 12th of May, which has been announced as the Jerusalem Day, according to the Hebrew calendar, the Jewish calendar, it falls on the 9th of May, which is on the 27th or 28th of Ramadan. So we have seen a very big clash. Before our own eyes, we were seeing people being kicked around in the mosque while they were praying, a heinous crime that no one of the right mind can accept. We don't need a law for this, but it is actually in the UN Charter. You are not supposed to hurt people who are praying in the house of worship, no matter what the religion, whether it's a synagogue, a mosque, a church. This has been a carnal rule. So what happened? We saw with our own eyes. 300 people were injured. They were beaten. They were shot at using rubber bullets, stun grenade, even tear gas canister. They did not shoot the tear gas canister upward. They shot it into the Palestinian people who were gathering in the mosque for qiyam and for living up the night of the last 10 days of the Ramadan and also Laylatul Qadr. They were reading the Quran. What else are you doing in the mosque? But they have planned for this. They closed all the entrance into the mosque. So this year only 90,000 people were in the mosque. Whereas in the previous years, during Ramadan, there are close to 300,000 people who actually spend their days and nights in the last 10 days of Ramadan. So what are you supposed to do? Just sit down and watch? And Hamas has actually issued warning. If this provocation, this nonsense is not stopped by the Israeli offensive army, we have to use the right term, because they have been using this IDF, Israeli Defense Force. What are they defending themselves from? They are actually attacking. They are conducting attacks. So we call them Israeli Offensive Force of the rogue state of Israel. So Hamas have issued this warning, and Israel the regime has ignored it and keep beating people. But alhamdulillah, the Murabitin and the Murabita, the defenders of Al-Aqsa, they stood their ground. And the settlers who were actually gathering at the Western Wall, the Burak Wall, or what they call as the Wailing Wall, the Kotel, they have failed to take over the mosque. So their attempt has been foiled. But the Israeli offensive army keep beating people. They even attack the clinic in the mosque, which is treating people from injuries. So when the deadline reached on the 27th of Ramadan, Hamas has no other choices but to lob rockets into Baitul Maqdis. The target is not the mosque, but the surrounding area, especially the places of the area where the settlers are living. And this time, the Dome of the Rock, the Iron Dome, which is the guarantee for the Israeli safety from any impending attacks by the Palestinian, failed to function at a certain degree, because this time, more than 100 rockets were launched simultaneously, not like before. Maybe 5 at one time and then followed by another 3. So the Israeli army managed to intercepted these rockets one by one. But when 100 came at the same time, the system failed. Of course, they have shot down many of the rockets, but some, and for our information, some of the rockets were actually dud, meaning to say that they don't have a warhead. They will not explode if we reach their target. But some actually landed, and then Israel retaliated by attacking the masses, the people in Gaza. And we know the first attack actually killed half of them were children, and they were playing in the playground. And up until now, like Dr. Chandra has enlightened us, more than 200, and Dr. Azam also has mentioned 260 to date. The number of mortality due to the attack was 260. Half of them were children and women and the elderly. Yeah. Meaning to say that they use these people, the unarmed people, as their target, and they are using the most sophisticated weapon there is in their arsenal. Now they are using F-35, Raptor, which is the latest state-of-the-art fighter jet provided by the US. And of course, the US is behind this. There's no secret about it. They are using the latest technology on a helpless people. People under siege, people under economic blockade, they are not allowed to leave or come in. Even we are not allowed to enter like we used to do in the past. So what happened? They underestimated the capacity of the fighters of the Palestinian. And to retaliate, they launched hundreds of rockets to Tel Aviv. To their surprise, to the Israeli surprise, they did not actually anticipate that Palestinian has that capacity, and in fact, they launched their latest rocket. You may call it homemade. They call it Iais 250, that can reach the furthest point in Israel. In other words, no more place in Israel is safe from the rocket attacks of the Gaza. And they hit Tel Aviv airport and also Ramon. So no more international flights coming in and leaving Israel. And this is actually the closure of the airport is not because of the failing of the rockets, but the closure of the airport is because Netanyahu did not want Israelis to leave. Because this time around, they feel that Israel is not safe anymore. And some of the many, in fact, are playing with this idea of leaving Israel for good and returning back to where they came from. They came from Russia, they came from New York, they came from Europe, from all over Europe. And it's not worth to stay in Israel and to defend an idea, an ideology that will kill them in the end. So this is a situation. So what happened today in the last spate of attack, just before the previous one, 2014, 2012, and the one before that, 2009, 2010, the culprit, the one who actually started it, is Israel. They are the criminals, they are the crook, but they portray themselves as the victims. They are playing victims, and they claim that we do this in the act of self-defense. And of course, their allies will buy this idea, although they know that it is a lie, a white lie. The Israelis are lying through their teeth. So this is a situation. I hope that this narrative will have to be spread far and wide. It has to be, it has to be the viral kan. So Alhamdulillah, I'm seeing His Excellency Walid Abu Ali is in the forum now. Assalamualaikum, Your Excellency. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So I think I have given my point of view on what is happening today and how it has developed to what and unfolded like what is happening now. So I'm passing it back to our moderator, Brother Dr. Azam. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Prof. Hafidzi. I think you have also enlightened and continued some of the points where Prof. Chandra has mentioned, and also you told us the current scenario, and I think what's happening the past 10 days or so. It was something which is not new. And I think it is a provocation by the Israelis towards the Palestinian land, especially in Gaza, and also I think from other the points, I think I understood that it happened many times during Ramadan, and why they choose at the end of Ramadan. Perhaps that will be something that we need to explore, and perhaps the panelists can also share. So thank you very much, Prof. Hafidzi. We would like to welcome His Excellency Walid Abu Ali, who just joined us, and I think this is very timely that we will have the question to His Excellency. How are you, His Excellency?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and a very good evening, everybody. First, my apology for being late. I had another very important commitment. I tried to be on time. I've been late 15 minutes. My apology.
Okay.
Thanks very much, my dear brothers, for inviting me for this panel tonight. And let me start thanking my dear brother, Dr. Chandra Muzaffar, and my dear brother, Hafidzi Mohamed Noor, and our moderator, Dr. Mohamed Azam. Me as a Palestinian ambassador, based on the latest developments on the ground in Palestine, if I can share with you the latest figures of this Israeli war crime, this Israeli state terrorism carried out against our Palestinian people. And if I just update you with the latest numbers, up to around 241 shaheeds to the last moment, with the time difference with Palestine, to go back 5 hours, now it's 5 p.m. in Palestine. The airstrikes continued. Israeli attacking the Palestinian civilians, innocent people, continued. The Israeli rockets are not differentiating between this Palestinian and that Palestinian. In the Israeli views, good Palestinians are dead Palestinians. And in the West Bank, there were 26 shaheeds. On Jerusalem, 1 Palestinian was shot dead. The number of injured people in total, we have 7,802 injured. And the number is increasing more and more. The first question you asked me is, what is your priorities?
Yes,
In
indeed.
2
Yes,
words,
yes,
I
yes,
can
yes,
say
yeah.
our top priority is to stop the bleeding. Our top priority is the international community's responsibility to put pressure on Israel to stop their crimes. It's a war crime carried on, and international community, unfortunately, all they've done condemned what the Israelis are doing. We as Palestinians are looking for some action to be taken against Israel to stop their violation of the international law. The Israelis are feeling immune by continue to violate the international law. All international community who believe in human rights and who believes in democracy, where are they to stop the killing of women, children, elderly Palestinians, when the Israeli F-16s and the Israeli Apaches targeting residential towers, houses in Gaza, Palestinians who are protesting in the West Bank to support their brothers and sisters in Gaza, Palestinians inside the Green Line, 1.5 million Palestinians in what's called Israel, who were protesting to support brothers and sisters in Gaza. What the international community is doing to stop the Israeli violation. Benjamin Netanyahu and his government chosen to shift the battle from Bayt al-Maqdis, from Al-Quds, from Al-Aqsa to Gaza. He believed that will be cheaper for him because he was pushed to the corner. But luckily, as Palestinians, all Palestinians in Gaza, in the West Bank, in Jerusalem, inside the Green Line, and in the diaspora are unified. Palestinians, Arabs, Muslim Ummah, all unified against the Israeli aggression, against what the Israelis are doing. I'm sorry, my tone might be high a little bit, but I hope you understand our feelings. How do we feel witnessing our innocent women and children, elderly Palestinian dead? Families are suffering, whether they are Hamas, whether they are Fatah, all Palestinians are paying the bill. International community must understand that our top priority is the Israeli occupation. We have to get rid of the Israeli occupation. Then Palestinians will decide their future. They will decide whatever and whoever is going to lead them through a democratic process. They will be free to have their own election. As we stated clearly, election without Jerusalem, it's not going to happen. Without Palestinian people in Jerusalem participating in the election, we will never have the election take place. If the Western world, United States of America, and the international community wants to see Palestinians living in peace and reach stability in the Middle East, where the Palestinian cause is the core issue and the cornerstone. Without the Palestinian enjoying their rights in an independent Palestinian state and Jerusalem as its capital, Israelis will never enjoy peace and they will never live in peace. This is our top priority. At the moment, as I've told you and I've said earlier, all those Palestinians who are suffering because of the Israeli airstrikes, we ended up with over than 50,000 Palestinians homeless in Gaza. We have around 8,000 Palestinians injured. Our hospitals were targeted. Our schools were targeted. Everybody, the farms in Gaza were targeted. Israeli must be stopped. Israeli government and Israeli leaders must be taken to The Hague, to ICC. They must brought to justice. They must pay the bill. They should not wait and continue to do what they are doing against our people.
Okay, thank you very much, His Excellency. I think we have heard, I mean, how frustrated His Excellency as the Palestinian what is taking place right now in Palestine, especially in Gaza. And I think it shows how united the Palestinians, be it Hamas and Fatah, they have united. And I think one of the important points that His Excellency mentioned is for the international, if I may say, the international body to stop this fighting, especially from Israel, that have killed hundreds of innocent people in Palestine. Okay, thank you very much, His Excellency. We would like to have, we would like to have the second round, but perhaps the second round we have to shorten a bit of the time because we would like to give more time for the viewers, especially from those who have joined us in the Zoom, to ask questions. Prof. Chandra, if I may go back to you, but this time I have to limit the time. Prof. Chandra, sorry to limit the time, but we are in the it's not the real the war time here, but it's in regard to the justice that we'd like to give for the viewers to ask questions. Okay, Prof. Chandra, what are the possible roadmaps towards resolution, especially in the long term?
Thank you, Brother Azam. Well, any long-term solution to the Palestinian crisis must give due emphasis to the desire of the Palestinian people to determine their own future. This is the principle of self-determination. That's the first principle. They must have the right to determine their own future. So once you recognize that, the next question, how will that right express itself? What sort of structures will have to emerge? Is it possible at all through a two-state solution, or maybe there should be something else, a single-state solution? The form is secondary. I think what is primary is a recognition of the fundamental rights of all the people And by this I mean not just Muslims or Christians, but also the Jews who have decided to make Palestine their home. Give everyone the right to determine the future of this land. That is fundamental. At the same time, I think one has to work out the structures. It could be a confederation, which is a loose type of federation, a single federation, loose type of federation, in the form of a confederation, or it could be something else. I do not think one can have two states in that very tiny part of the world. I don't think this is possible because there would be continuous expressions of suspicion, of uncertainty, and all the rest of it. If, on the other hand, the principles are laid out very clearly, a single state with equal rights for everyone, recognizing that equal rights would give birth to a state which the people want, but it may not be what we have in mind. But if the people want such a state where everyone enjoys rights and responsibilities, and you try to build a nation which has some of the characteristics of what Palestine has always been. Palestine, in many ways, is perhaps the one place where you can really build up a multi-ethnic, multi-religious nation, given its history. So I think there should be an attempt along those lines.
Yes, Prof. Chandra?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the essential points that I've made, about what the solution is, it's basically a recognition of the right of self-determination, which is what the UN has also called for. Many nations have accepted this. So let's make an attempt to recognize that right. Why is it that we are so concerned about the right of self-determination of so many different peoples around the world? But when it comes to Palestine, it's different. Why don't we recognize this fundamental right of the Palestinians to shape their own future? Needless to say, it cannot be done as long as you have occupation, as long as you have these apartheid structures of power. You have to get rid of those things, and then you can have the people expressing themselves in a genuine democracy that values freedom and integrity of everyone.
Okay, Prof. Chandra? Okay, okay. Thank you very much, Prof. Chandra, for the point. Can we move to Prof. Hafidzi for the second round? Okay, Prof. Hafidzi, what are the most impactful ways, I think Muslim NGOs as yourself, who's now committing in this, heading this My Care, or the general population can aid and positively contribute to the Palestinian cause? Over to you, Prof. Hafidzi.
Yeah, thank you, Brother Dr. Azam. This is a very important question, and I will touch on it briefly on 3 points. Number one, we are seeing civil society nowadays, they are more empowered than ever. In the wake of the attack today on Gaza and also in Baitul Maqdis, we are seeing people thronging the streets in London, and in the biggest yet demonstration, 150,000 people turn up in London. And we are not talking about London. There are 80 other cities throughout the nation. They have demonstrations in Edinburgh, in Glasgow, in Leeds, in Sheffield, in Cardiff, and all other cities. And these were not predominantly Muslim. They were from every ethnic groups, even the local British, white British, and also people of all walks of life. They came out strongly in support of the and expressed a solidarity with the Palestinian people. And we are seeing demonstrations in Australia, countries that are traditionally siding with Israel. Most of the times when motions are put up in the United Nations, they will definitely vote in favor for Israel. Australia, we are seeing big demonstrations in Perth, in Sydney, in Melbourne. So, and all the other cities in Europe as well. So, in short, we are seeing a very strong pressure that is coming from the civil society, and this is something unprecedented. We have seen this in the attack in 2014, as well as during the tragedy of the Mavi Marmara. But nowadays, even in this pandemic situation, people are braving the situation, and they came out and expressed their support for the Palestinians. That's number one. Number two, this is something that all of us have to work on. The Palestinian issue is not a religious issue, which has been explained by Dr. Chandra just now. The Palestinian issue is a humanitarian issue, a humanitarian tragedy. And everyone must be together and form a united front to face up with Israel. In Malaysia, for instance, yeah, generally speaking, only the Muslims are showing the concern, and the other ethnic groups, the non-Muslim, specifically, most of them, they remain silent, or they prefer not to talk about it. And this is not right, because everyone should own up to this issue. Everyone should be able to relate to the Palestinian issue, because it is a humanitarian one, a humanitarian tragedy. Like Nelson Mandela has mentioned in one of his important speeches, convincing statements, that if we fail to address the Palestinian issue, we will never be free. The whole world will never be free if we fail the Palestinians. So it is very important in Malaysia, in particular, that we instill this understanding and also this empathy to every Malaysian citizen, regardless of race and religion. We must come out as a single voice to speak up for the Palestinians. This is something that is very deficient in our work and our struggle. And that's number two. And number three, we have to give a strong voice to the Palestinians. So we need to dwell on this issue. We need to talk about it. We need to we need to organize more forums that involve everyone. Everyone has a role. Whoever he is, whatever walk in all walks of life, they have a moral duty to state their stand and express their solidarity with the Palestinian people, with the oppressed people, because this is a duty. We are duty bound to assist the Palestinian, not just in financial form, but we need to give them a very strong voice. This is what is needed, like Dr. Chandra mentioned just now. The international community, the international forum, the United Nations must buckle up and must rise to the occasion, because member countries, member states of the General Assembly has expressed support for the Palestinian cause. And in 2014, if I'm not mistaken, 140 countries actually support the idea of Palestine as a sovereign state, which is unprecedented, has never been seen before in the United Nations General Assembly. So these are the three things I think we need to work on so that we come out with a stronger force. And Israel will come under pressure, great pressure, as a result of this civil society movement. Wallahu alam. Thank you so much, Brother Dr. Azam.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Hafidzi. I think with that three important points that you have just mentioned, we go back to His Excellency Walid Abu Ali. What are your hopes for the international community within the context of Palestine and its quest for liberation? Over to you, Excellency. Can you unmute, please? Okay.
Hello, you hear
Yes,
me?
yes. Okay, please proceed.
Thank you very much for your good question. And let me go back to first Prof. Chandra, what he had mentioned, because he highlighted the one-state solution, two-state solution, and all that. To be able to understand realities on the ground, I have to emphasize the following. Number one, we do have 1.5 million Palestinians who remained in historical Palestine, inside the Green Line, we call them, within Israel, in two brackets. They have the Israeli citizenship. They participate in the Israeli election, and they are represented in the Knesset, the Parliament of Israel. And they are struggling up until this minute and fighting the discrimination, because it's known to everybody Israel is an apartheid state. So having Palestinians, 1.5 million Palestinians in Israel, suffering and struggling discrimination because they are treated as second-class citizens. That's number one. Category number two, 2 million Palestinians in Gaza Strip who have been suffering for almost 1.5 decades under siege, and the international community witnessed their daily suffering in Gaza. All the borders under the Israeli control, except the Rafah crossing, which is under the Egyptian control. And they are in need of the very basic humanitarian daily needs. And the international community, represented by all human rights institutions, and they know realities as it is on the ground, and they know how much our Palestinian people in Gaza are suffering. This is the second category. The third category, around 3 million Palestinians living in the West Bank and in Jerusalem, and they are protesting, struggling the Israeli occupation on a daily basis, the Israeli checkpoints, the Israeli discrimination wall, apartheid wall, the Israeli invasions, the Israeli settlers attacks the farms, kill students, enable Palestinian women to reach hospitals, prohibiting Palestinians to reach Al-Aqsa Mosque to offer the prayer, arresting Palestinians continuously. That's the third category. And the fourth category, almost half of our nation live refugees in diaspora in the neighboring countries and all over the world, including Malaysia. We have over 1,200 refugees who ended up in Malaysia because they had to leave Iraq and Syria. International community knows very well that Palestinians in diaspora who are fighting the right of return, and they are struggling to achieve their rights to go back and live in Palestine in an independent, free country. Our hopes that the international community, through the United Nations, through the Quartet, had sponsored what been proposed for years, the two-state solution, without having an independent Palestinian state on 1967 borders with Jerusalem, Al-Quds as its capital, Israelis will never enjoy peace. They tried peace treaty with Egypt, the biggest Arab country, years ago, and they never enjoyed peace. They tried peace treaty with Jordan and Wadi Araba, and they never enjoyed peace. We as Palestinians tried the Oslo agreement, hoping that that will enable us to have an independent Palestinian state with Al-Quds as its capital. And we never achieved that. The Israelis and the international community knows very well that the cornerstone, the core issue of having a comprehensive peace in the Middle East is by recognizing the Palestinian rights to live in an independent Palestinian state on 1967 border with Jerusalem as its capital. Without that, there is no way peace can be achieved, even if the Israelis normalize relations with all Arab and Muslim countries. Palestinians will continue to struggle, will continue to fight. If we can't achieve what we are struggling for, our sons and our grandsons will continue. Israelis and the American knows this reality. We as Palestinian, our main issue is the Israeli occupation, nothing else. Our main challenge is the Israeli occupation. Yes, similar to all other nations in the globe, we are countering the COVID-19, but in addition to that, the Israeli occupation to us is more risky than the COVID-19. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, His Excellency Walid Abu Ali. Okay, now we would like to have the third session of this Q&A. If I may invite, if Prof. Kamali is in the Zoom participants, he can join us. Okay, in the meantime, there are questions from the participant in the Zoom which are addressed to all the panelists. Is Dr. Iais Hussein, the President and CEO of ML Research, writing the Star Online, proposed a multinational Islamic Defense Force as a response to the politics of Israel's apartheid Zionists. The question here is, why hasn't this been done long ago, and why are Muslim leaders so lame to bring it about? Any response for the panelists?
Well, let me, Brother Azam, try to give a simple, perhaps superficial answer. A unified, multi-ethnic, multi-religious movement on behalf of Palestine does not exist because of the differences amongst various groups, even if in principle they support Palestine, but there are serious differences which put them in different categories. Why should we be surprised? Because even if you look at the Palestinian movement itself within the land that we know as Palestine, it is divided. It is divided. Hamas and Fatah and other groups and so on. So this is the reality. And because the movement itself is divided, there are different interests, different tendencies and trends, you find that we don't have a unified Palestinian movement, let alone an army. It just doesn't exist. So I wouldn't yearn for such a solution because it's not going to happen for a long time to come. But I think what can be done is the different groups that support Palestine, if they can work out a common program on certain specific issues and take a stand, I think that would be a good beginning. For instance, there is no reason why different groups that support the Palestinian cause cannot adopt a unified position and work towards that on, say, something like the right of return of the Palestinians, given that there are few millions who are living outside Palestine. You can make that a central issue and try to mobilize public opinion. I think that can be done. And I should mention something else that's just happened, a couple of days ago, that gives us a lot of hope if you can look at it from a certain angle. I'm sure some of us here are aware that the Irish Parliament adopted a resolution calling for a ban on goods from Israel. That's very significant. I do not know of any Western country that has been prepared to do that. And why do I see it as significant? It was not even highlighted, unfortunately, in our media or in the media of countries that may have huge segments of the population that are sympathetic to the Palestinian struggle. But they didn't highlight this. But it's significant. Why? Because if you look at the history of the Irish people and their role in certain global causes, apart from their own struggle for liberation, don't forget that Ireland was Britain's first colony, historically speaking, the first colony. And they've stood up against British imperial rule for such a long while. But let us also not forget an even more important point, that in the global movement against apartheid, boycotting apartheid South Africa and so on, years ago, one of the first countries, perhaps the first country as a government, to take a stand and to express with tremendous courage their support for the majority population in South Africa was actually Ireland. And now when I heard this, the Irish Parliament taking a stand and the speeches made by the members of Parliament, it really warmed the cockles of my heart, because I said, this is good. This is good. I think we have to get more and more governments to adopt a stand like this. And I think it is also important to encourage various governments, especially governments that represent populations that are largely non-Muslim, to come out on behalf of the Palestinian cause. And I just want to give you 2 or 3 examples very quickly. Cuba, all along, has taken a principled stand on behalf of the Palestinian cause. I think that is very important. They've never wavered. They've always been steadfast in this. Venezuela, starting with Hugo Chavez, also took a very strong position in the past and continues to take a strong position on behalf of the Palestinians. And Bolivia, which has now returned to the people after a pro-US government came to power, but it was overthrown by the will of the people. So I think there is hope. And I tell many of my friends, especially my Muslim friends, if you look at what these Latin American countries have done and compare that to some of the Arab countries, some of the Muslim countries, they put these Arab and Muslim countries to shame, given their courage, their determination, their commitment to the Palestinian cause. People say, oh, you don't know what this superpower will do to you. Don't forget that Cuba is 90 kilometers away from the United States. Look at their courage. They've stood up. In spite of all that they've gone through, their suffering, they've stood up for just causes, including the cause of the Palestinian people. So let's publicize examples like this to encourage people, to inspire them to stand up for the Palestinian cause.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Chandra. We welcome Prof. Dato Muhammad Hashim Kamali, CEO of Iais Malaysia. Prof. Kamali, you have any comments or questions that you would like to raise?
Well, I would like to express appreciation first to the learned speakers. And I think what is important is the Palestine issue and the problems that are happening has the support, sentimental support of the generalities of Muslims and other people, but the specifics of the issues are not very well known. I listened to His Excellency the Ambassador, what is happening in Gaza, in the West Bank, in other parts. These are the kind of the problematics that people are not very well informed. I think information to split the bigger issue into address and inform people, I think this is something important. The other is that there is this general support. I think Muslim leaders, countries, politicians, they are supportive, but I think there should be some ways maybe to concretize that support. Like Turkey, Malaysia, and 1 or 2 other countries, their representatives in the United Nations should make specific proposals. What do we expect the international community? I think that the Embassy of Palestine right now, at the end of this very useful discussion, maybe we can issue a statement. With the help of the Embassy of Palestine, Iais, maybe we can come up with a statement and make specific proposals, what can be done, the people, civil society, the international community, to kind of, move from general discussion to proposals to kind of specific position. This may be the next information, but also to take the next step, what the outcome of that in terms of, proposal might be. It is important to keep the people informed. I think perhaps it will be good for the embassy of Palestine to have, they might consider to have, kind of an information sheet now and then on what is, what he just explained himself, gave the information. This will be very interesting. I think that generally I'm very appreciative. I've learned quite a great deal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Dato' Hashim Kamali. Okay, we go to the next questions that addressed to all the panelists. Okay, these questions came from Mr. Muzammil Daud. Is it true or just rumors, the idea that some sections of Israeli people, especially the so-called religious Jews, oppose the aggression of their government? Please, anyone from the panelists? Perhaps. Yes?
Can I say a few words on this? In fact, I would like to address the first two questions jointly, because I think they are related. Number one, if we want to resort to defense or military options, I think this is out of the question, because definitely we are not ready. We are divided. Let's face the truth. The Ummah is divided. We talk about OIC, we talk about the Arab League, and the Muslim countries in total, we are not of the same voice when it comes to the Palestinian issue. And if we resort to military measures, then it may escalate to something more serious. What we need to do is to engage the Palestinian people. And I think we have a very good start, like His Excellency has mentioned just now. There are three national constants that whereby every Palestinian can relate to. Number one, the right of return of the refugees. Number two, Jerusalem or Baitul Maqdis as the capital of Palestine. And number three, to be united in facing Israel, in the sense that they should not be recognizing Israel in any form. They have to consider the Israeli regime as an enemy that need to be dealt with through civil movements, through resistance. So we have actually a very good start here. And number two, coming to the issue of support from the Israeli themselves. Now we must remember that not all Jews are Zionists, and some of them actually is against the policy of Israel on the Palestinian people. Now there is a religious organization, Naturi Karta, based in London. They are very staunch supporter of the Palestinian cause, and every time that there is an attack or an issue that came out regarding Palestinian, they will come out strongly in support and also express their solidarity with the Palestinian people. We have seen this during the land convoy way back in 2013 and Mavi Marmara incident, and even every attack that took place in Gaza, they came out and expressed their voice together with people of conscience who are against what the Israeli is doing to the Palestinian people. Number two, there are certain public figures, intellectuals, for example, Ilan Pape, Miko Pellet, which is the son of a general, who actually relate, and they can relate, and also they address the Palestinian issue as an oppression of the Israeli regime. Ilan Pape, for instance, he has authored a number of books, and he was disowned by the Israeli regime. Now he's staying in the US, teaching in the US. So I think we need to engage these personalities, even if we recall during the women's boat to Gaza, there is an Israeli on board, and they are she is very sympathetic. Zohar, her name is Zohar, and she did not mince her words that the government, her own government, is not doing justice to the Palestinian people. And in fact, she joined the international initiative, FFC, Freedom Flotilla Coalition, together with the personalities from all over the world to break the siege in Gaza. These are just a few examples of personalities. I think we must engage, continuously engage, so that the civil society is more empowered. Coming back to my previous point, engagement, that is the key word. Everyone need to engage. Forget about military, resorting to military options. It's not going to work. It's very dangerous. It's going to escalate into something that is beyond control. So what we need to do is empower the civil society. For instance, the Mavi Marmara attempt to break the siege, it has really brought support from all over the world, and also women's vote to Gaza. We need to do this from time to time. Give Israeli that empowerment, give the Palestinians that empowerment, so that they can fight this with the confidence that the civil society from all over the world is behind them and with them. So, wallahu alam. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Hafidzi. Any response, perhaps from His Excellency? Do you have any response on that?
Yes, please. Thank you very much. Highly appreciate what Dr. Chandra had said and what Prof. Hafidzi had said. And back to the main two issues they raised. Let me just add to what they said. If we continue to have an unified Muslim Ummah, unfortunately, the Israelis are benefiting out ununified Muslim countries. We have so many differences, even when we meet together within the OIC, when the Arab countries meet within the Arab League, Palestinian cause used to be the top priority #1 issue. Unfortunately, lately we noticed as Palestinians that the Palestinian cause become a secondary issue, not on the top of their agendas. That's #1. #2, within Israel, they used to be peace believers. The peace campaign within Israel used to work, but through the latest 3 Israeli election, we noticed that the Israeli community is going toward extremism. The Israelis are going towards the right. If you ask me as a Palestinian, and I live in the West Bank, I live in Jerusalem, I live between Jerusalem and Bethlehem, I do witness on daily basis, although there is no political party represent the Israeli settlers, but the final say at the moment in Israel are for the settlers, because they are in the ground and they are the main supporters of the Israeli government. Benjamin Netanyahu, for example, when he had the biggest mistake in this last war against Palestinians, he counted that when he invaded Al-Aqsa Mosque in the last week of the holy month of Ramadan, and he supported the settlers to Sheikh Jarrah, he believed he can do that while the Arab countries and the Muslim countries are busy silent during the month of Ramadan. But actually, on the ground, this had unified all Muslims and all Arabs to back up Palestinians towards what Benjamin Netanyahu and his government has done. Back to the suggestion of the chairman, Prof. Prof. Kamali, sorry, Hashim Kamali. I highly welcome his suggestion, and as an ambassador and the Palestinian embassy in Kuala Lumpur, with all the support we are getting from Malaysians, I will be more than happy to work together with anybody. The embassy consider it open 24 hours to do whatever we can do to encourage Malaysians continue their support and solidarity and to continue help Palestinians in all levels. At the same time, as you know, your embassy, the Malaysian embassy in Amman, Jordan, who's been just credited few weeks ago to Palestine. They are prepared together with the Palestinian embassy in Kuala Lumpur to work together and to do whatever we can do to all Palestinians, whether they are in Gaza, whether they are in Beit al-Maqdis, in Al-Quds, whether they are in the West Bank, all over. I'm so happy as an ambassador to do whatever we can do to help, even through Wisma Putra. We work on daily basis, we cooperate and coordinate in all issues, and I will be more than happy to do whatever we can do to increase the knowledge and the awareness of our brothers and sisters in Malaysia.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, His Excellency. Okay, with the time constraints, we can only take the last questions. I'm so sorry about this. This question is from Reese. Totally great that this is not a religion but a humanitarian issue. And Ireland, the non-Muslim country, has always been vocal about their stand on this and rarely to remove Israel embassy from their country. The question is, why all the Muslim countries during OIC meetings, the outcome is always the same and being polite in their stance. Thus, what could we do collectively in action instead of doing lip service towards Palestinian ethnic cleansing? Any response for these questions?
If I may attempt an answer of
Yes,
sorts, Brother Azam. If you look at the last 10 years or so of the Palestinian struggle, civil society groups have been much more committed and more courageous than governments. Whether we talk of the expeditions to Gaza under siege, or if we talk about the violations of human rights and attempts to champion the rights of the Palestinian people, whatever. If you look at the ones that have been vocal, organized, willing to mobilize the people, it's been the civil society groups, not so much the governments. I think there is a trend which will get stronger, and I hope that there are two things that we'll be able to do. Civil society groups in relation to what I've just said. I think number one, it is very important that we expand the involvement of civil society groups and emphasize their multi-ethnic, multi-religious character. That I think is very, very critical. In other words, present the Palestinian struggle as a struggle that goes beyond Muslims. Of course, there will always be the Islamic dimension, but should we not think seriously about projecting the Palestinian struggle as a genuinely global struggle? Like what happened in the case of apartheid. From the mid-80s onwards, the apartheid struggle acquired the characteristics of a global struggle, the struggle against apartheid. I think that's what we have to do as far as Palestine is concerned. Civil society groups should work together, get more and more groups of diverse religious backgrounds together and project this, that this is a multi-religious global struggle for justice And I think that is what we have to emphasize. That what is at stake is justice and human dignity. And we should link ourselves with other struggles which are happening in different parts of the world and say that this Palestinian struggle is part of those struggles. We haven't done enough of that, projecting a different notion of what this struggle is all about. And at the concrete level, and this is the second point I want to make, we should perhaps think of a recent struggle that can serve as a mobilizer in the case of the Palestinian struggle. And what is the recent struggle? If you look at what happened in Iraq, 2003, you know the significance of what happened in Iraq, which we have not emphasized enough, including groups that were against the invasion and occupation of Iraq. The struggle against the invasion and occupation of Iraq by the imperial forces, that struggle was the greatest human rights struggle cutting across all boundaries and barriers in recent decades. It was a genuine global struggle. Someone estimated that at its peak, no less than 50 million people took part in the protest movements. March 20th, around that, remember? 2003. More than 50 million people. Those who wrote letters, those who wrote articles, those who held street demonstrations, candlelight processions. If you put all these things together, in terms of mass participation, it was the most significant in recent history. So I think we should make that the rallying point and say that the Palestinian struggle has to take this form. And why? Because it is a struggle that has the potential to become that sort of global meeting point. The struggle itself becomes the global meeting point and brings about changes which will have a long-term impact upon the human race. Just think about it. The Palestinian struggle has brought to the fore the struggle against hegemony. It has brought to the fore the struggle against colonialism, as it was in the past and as it continues to express itself. The Palestinian struggle is a struggle against racism. The Palestinian struggle is a struggle against apartheid. All these struggles that have been so important in our recent history, the Palestinian struggle brings these things together. But if, and I want to be very candid about this, if some of us in our enthusiasm, we just project it as a Muslim struggle and forget about the other dimensions. I know this is something that Brother Hafidzi, myself, and others, we have always continued to emphasize this, that this is a universal global struggle. And if we can do that, then I think Palestine, as I see it, its destiny is not confined to that little land called Palestine. Its destiny is to shape the world and the future of humankind. That I think is the meaning of Palestine. And from a truly spiritual perspective, that is what Palestine is. The meeting place of the three great Abrahamic faiths and also other faiths that go beyond the Abrahamic faiths. It has that appeal. So let us try to transform the Palestinian struggle into that moment in history. That moment in history that is going to perhaps eventually change the world, bring about a more genuine, just world.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Chandra. I think we come to the end of our forum tonight, but before we wrap up our event tonight, can I just give, a couple of minutes for every panelist to give or to say a few words, the last few words. We will begin with Her Excellency Walid Abu Ali, please.
Finally, I highly appreciate the efforts of all colleagues, participants, Dr. Mohamed Azam, and the center to actually take in your account the very critical situation back in Palestine. To have this panel is a great efforts, which I highly appreciate. My message to brothers and sisters in Malaysia, all Malaysians, continue your support to Palestine, continue your solidarity with Palestine, and I'm sure the day will come where we all together will pray in Al-Aqsa Mosque and for non-Muslims in the Church of Nativity in Bethlehem very soon, inshallah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you very much, His Excellency Walid Abu Ali. Can we have Professor Hafidzi, please?
Yes, I would like to concur with what Dr. Chandra has mentioned in his last response, that we need to engage the civil society, and in that way they will be more empowered. And then secondly, in our struggle to liberate Palestine, from day one, Baitul Maqdis is never meant as the exclusive right for the Muslims. It is supposed to be the center of civilization, and it has to be freed from all forms of oppression and persecution. And that is what Umar al-Khattab has done in the past. Salahuddin al-Ayyubi. We have never announced or declared that Baitul Maqdis is the exclusive right of the Muslims. It is for all. It is a civilization, the center of civilization for humanity. And that's why I would like to remind myself and also our partners in addressing this issue. There should never be a racial undertone. We must be able to distinguish between the Jews and the Zionists. The Jews are fellow human beings. It's just an ethnic group like any one of us. And we are supposed to live in harmony with them. And what we are fighting is an ideology that oppress others, disown others, and try to occupy a nation. That we have to be very clear on this. We are not fighting the Jews. We are fighting an extreme group which use an ideology to undermine humanity at large. So that is my message. Let us work on that. We have a long way to go. We have to bring in all ethnic groups in Malaysia, for instance. That is our immediate target now. Get everyone on board, and we need to appreciate the contribution of everyone from all walks of life, regardless of race and religion. Wallahu alam. Thank you so much for giving this opportunity for us to express on this very important issue.
Thank you very much, Prof. Hafidzi. Last but not least, Prof. Chandra.
Well, I have said what I wanted to say. I suppose what I remarked just now is, in a sense, rounding up of my own position on this issue.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, all the panelists and also all the viewers there, and also those participants in the Zoom. Okay, on Iais on behalf of Iais Malaysia, we would like to thank all the panelists and also all the viewers for joining us on this important and significant forum. We wish the Palestinians people either in the Gaza, in the West Bank, and in part, and we also wish that the international body could stand and make a resolution to stop the war. Until then, we would like to thank everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good night.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih, Prof. Sudah di